I
Oh,
love your necklace.
thank you so much. Before we get started, it's kind of silly, but I have to show you because I've been showing everyone and their mom. I did this painting of Superman back in December, and I actually gave one to like James and Rachel and David because I went to like a trailer reveal event, and so I just like I had to show you.
That's
I love this movie.
that's
Thank you
amazing.
so
That's a
much.
beautiful painting. You did that? You did
Thank you.
that?
I did do that. Yeah, and I just wanted to mention to you because like DC has been like one of the biggest fandoms in my life, if it's not obvious. And it's something that's been kind of like a lifeline through a lot of like tough times in my life. So I'm just really looking forward to this film, and it's been kind of like a guiding light too, like for my career. Trying to like work on any opportunities related to this has just been sort of like a bucket list item. So I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
Oh, well, thanks for saying all that. And that just means so much to us when our work is that important to folks. It means so much to us. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that kind of got me wondering, oh, well, before I get to that, like, I want to ask you about, like, what Superman has meant to you also, because, I'm sure you're getting a lot of people, you're seeing the reactions, but I'm sure for you also working on this, you're also probably pretty giddy during the process. Like, what is that like for you?
Yeah, this iteration of Superman, I think, definitely aligns most with how I've always felt about the character and about what Superman means. I grew up with the Christopher Reeves, the Christopher Reeve films from the 1978, Richard Donner, moving forward, and I just remember being completely enchanted by those movies as a little girl and loving the goodness in his heart and the goodness that he was as a character and that always stayed with me. And so I really feel like our version of the movie, I think, captures that about as beautifully as I could have hoped for. So it's to be a part of of an iteration of this that is as bright and hopeful and optimistic and filled with the goodness that it is. It feels incredibly rewarding to be a part of it. Mm.
Yeah, and this is, if I'm not mistaken, your fourth time working with James Gunn. Um, Five if you count the holiday special, that and Guardians was like considered one, I've heard you say. But I wanted to know, like, how has that relationship evolved from that first experience working with him till now?
Oh, it's been the most incredible collaboration of my career, and I owe everything to James uh, for where I am in my career right now. When I started working on these films about 8 years ago, women just weren't, not many women were working in the production design position at this level of filmmaking, in this arena of this scale, and definitely not in the superhero genre. There were very, very, very few of us. And when James opened that door and invited me into the arena and gave me an opportunity, that was back in 2017. It just kind of blew the door wide open on my career, on where I could go with this profession. And so I am so grateful to him for having done that. And then what it's meant is that I've been able to hire this beautiful array of folks in the department and be able to bring that diversity right into the department with me. And so that has been enormously important to me, and to be able to see that and to see the department grow and to see lots of folks get opportunities who may not have had opportunities otherwise. That's just been incredibly rewarding, incredibly gratifying, and that all has come from the relationship with him, with James. And then on the creative level, he's one of the most visionary directors, working, I think in the history of film, definitely working today. And you could tell from even his earlier movies, he loves he's incredibly visual. He loves color. He loves the energy in the image. He loves to really kind of go for it when you're doing the design. And so to be there as a partner along for that process, and to be able to have the dialogue back and forth that we do, which has now really become a really kind of beautiful shorthand. It's the most exciting time of my career. So yeah, so I feel very grateful to have been brought into the film family and to be a part of it. Mm.
I love that. That's awesome. Like you mentioned how he gave you an opportunity that, allowed you to do all these things. That's really important in this world. Like it's that person that gives you your first go that lets you just kind of take off. And that's incredible, the run that you've had. That's really important.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
of
it's really
course.
meant a lot, and I definitely don't take it lightly. And so yeah, so it's been a really exciting 8 years. Mhm.
Yeah, and that's also really good to hear you speak to as well that like your own art departments, if I'm not mistaken, in Guardians and on Superman, I believe about half of the people in the art department were women. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And that's been incredibly important to me when the door was opened for me. I just remember feeling this kind of a great sense of duty to continue opening that door so others could follow. And we really make it a point in the department that, hey, if there's somebody who's an assistant who has the talent and the drive and the enthusiasm to to jump up to be a graphic designer, and that person just needs a door open, let's try opening that door and giving them an opportunity. And time and time again, folks rise to the occasion. And we all know that for the longest time, I think the film industry is, along with many industries, it was male dominated. And I love my brother, I love my husband. This is not to say anything against them, but I really believe that the best room is a room filled with a huge variety of folks, and that everybody gets a seat at the table, and everybody has a voice in the conversation. And so to be able to look at the department that we've really built here over the years, knowing that that department would have looked very different a decade ago, and knowing that we've played a hand in bringing a lot of folks to the table, that's really meant a lot to me. So it's really exciting when we see photos of our department all together. I just beam with pride of who we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've also heard you talk about how like a good idea can come from anywhere in terms of like no one should be afraid to like share a random inspiration they got, and just like a big collaboration process. And so I was wondering if you could speak to the collaboration process for Superman and where some of your research and inspirations came from for designing like Metropolis and the Fortress of Solitude.
Sure. So for Metropolis, we actually looked at Edward Hopper paintings to consider the color. A lot of the colors in his work actually align really beautifully with the All-Star Superman series, which was one of the most important series for us when we were just beginning our journey here. And looking at Edward Hopper's paintings, a lot of the colors, you'll see a lot of the similar color palettes across those very unexpectedly, actually. And Edward Hopper paintings have this beautiful timelessness to them, and it really helped us consider bringing the same timelessness into the Metropolis world. And Judiana McCoskey, the designer, and I both talked about, at a squint, you shouldn't be able to identify the period that this movie was shot in, or the year this movie was shot in. So we ended up doing a nice big array of period New York, of 1940s New York, 1970s New York. What did Cleveland look like in the 80s? What did Chicago look like in the early 2000s? Just to try to get a nice kind of suspended in time glimpse of these different metropolitan areas. So that's what a lot of the research was for Metropolis. And then for the Fortress of Solitude, it was endless research into how does water freeze? How do crystals form? What kind of shapes do they take? What kind of finishes do they take? What do the ice caves in Iceland look like? And so it was a very deep dive into all the possibilities that existed there. So the walls of our art department were pretty fantastic with the array of subject matter that they covered.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm also wondering, as you're saying that, like, you're doing a lot of research, obviously, all these different time periods and places, but were there any sort of like happy accidents or unexpected inspirations that popped up for you guys?
Yes, well, I will say the happiest accident was by far and away this kind of great serendipitous story that happened with our Hall of Justice. So when I was doing my first lookbook for the film, it's always kind of a general tone and color lookbook. And so I, at that point, had looked at the All-Star Superman series, had started to see that our colors were going to lean heavily primary, yellows, reds, blues, obviously like his costume, some greens, some oranges. And then in that lookbook, I also touched on a couple other factors. So we wanted it to feel very geometric, have some really strong lines and strong shapes, have this sense of nostalgia that we'd have in Metropolis. And so I did this lookbook about 20 pages, and on the yellow page for the yellow color, I had found this gorgeous interior of this big circular, sweeping circular space that was bright yellow and had some orange through it. And it was entirely Art Deco, so it hit that kind of timeless period vibe. And so I put that in the book, and it just ended up in the book. And I didn't actually track back to see what the interior, what where that existed. I honestly, I thought it was somewhere overseas. Wasn't sure where it was. And so that was in the lookbook. We always loved that image. Felt like it touched on a lot of the themes that we wanted to hit visually. And then about a week later, my wonderful supervising art director, Dave Scott, sent me an article and said, "Hey, did you know that the exterior of the Hall of Justice is based on the train station in Cincinnati?" And he sent this photo. And of course, you see the exterior of that train station. And then, you see the corresponding photos of the Hall of Justice from the comic books and from Super Friends. And there it is. Okay, that's the exact same building. And there it was still standing. Now it's present day, it's a museum. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. And so I thought, okay, let's do a little Google search and see what the interior of this building looks like, because maybe it's somewhere where we could shoot. So I looked up the interior, and up pops the interior photos of this big circular yellow space that I had already put into my lookbook, but I had no idea was the Hall of Justice. And I literally like fell out of my chair. I was like,
That's
oh
so
my
funny.
God, what a sign. This means we absolutely have to go to Cincinnati to shoot. So I immediately sent the news article about the exterior to James, along with, the photos of the interior that we had looked at. And I just said, hey, this is where the actual Hall of Justice was based on. It's in Cincinnati. And wouldn't you know it, the interior is this lobby that we've been looking at from my tone book. It really feels like this should be our Hall of Justice. And he wrote back, right. He was like, "Oh my God, we've got to go there." And so we went there literally just a few weeks later, and all agreed, hey, this was worth the travel and the company move to go up and plant ourselves in Cincinnati for a few days for that scene. And every time I see
Wow.
that scene, I just beam with pride, and I feel like, there we go. That's where we were meant to be.
That is so cool. That's
That
something I
wild?
have to wonder too. That's wild. It's like the best coincidence because that's you were already on that track.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. One thing as you were saying, when every time you watch that scene, you love it, and I'm wondering if you're reminded of that memory. Because when I like get to do like my journalist like covering things, and then I watch movies, I'll think of like things that happened during junkets or whatever when I watch. So I wonder for you, when you watch the film, does like all these memories pop over the last couple years, or?
And entirely, every time you watch one of these films you're lucky enough to work on, it becomes like a 2 year travel through your memories from those years. And it feels like getting into the best time machine and going back and reliving all those experiences and saying, "Oh yeah, I remember we flew to Svalbard and did a helicopter tour of all their icebergs, and I remember when we went to Cleveland and
Wow.
walked the streets, and I remember." When we built our first crystal for the Fortress of Solitude. And and in fact, it's one of the hardest things is to watch the movie objectively and to not have it just be associated with all those memories. So it always takes me 4, 5, 6 viewings of a movie to actually watch it objectively as a film and to know how I feel about it as just a standalone movie.
That makes sense. That's actually the amount of times I've seen Superman. I've seen it 6 times. Yeah,
Ah,
I love this movie. Um, One thing I wanted to know also, yeah, I like over the moon about it. I've been so excited for the DCU to be here. So, one thing
yeah.
I'm curious about is what was the toughest set to crack in terms of like, was there any that was most challenging? I know you spoke to the Hall of Justice, but was there any that was like a bit difficult for you guys?
Probably one of the toughest ones to conceive of was the Pocket Universe, Lex's Pocket Universe. And so in the script, James said they go through a metal portal that takes into another dimension, the Pocket Universe, and you immediately look through the script trying to find, description of what this world could be, what the writer or the writer director has put in, and it said this is a world made of arithmetic, and then in parentheses he said, "I don't know what this looks like, but my production designer Beth will figure it out," and that was it. and and I got a chuckle out of that. I actually took a photo of it, and then when we all had our first creative meeting, James and Juliana, the wonderful costume designer, I had our first meeting. We all kind of like laughed over that and said, "Okay, so a world made of arithmetic, what could this be?" And he was great. He just said, go and do some exploring and and come back to me with things you think could work and some ideas. And so that was a really tough one to crack because you're trying to think what hasn't been done before. That's always the first thing because so much has been done now in these sci-fi films and fantastical films. And I wanted it to feel, we wanted it to feel like a dark kind of nightmare world. That was one of his other notes, one of James's other notes. And so the idea of the arithmetic, I thought, okay, what if we start with one single shape, a really simple shape, and what if that shape multiplies? And what if it's, it compounds, and as it compounds, it builds the structures of what that world is. And so we actually looked at a lot of different shapes. We looked at what if it's what if it's a little dimensional hexagon? What if it's triangles? And then the simple cube really ended up being the thing that worked best. And we thought, okay, what if it's cubes that just keep multiplying? So it was tricky to kind of figure out what the architecture could look like from that. But once we just started playing a bit with different shapes, and then we found the bismuth. It's a mineral, so a mineral called bismuth, which actually looks a lot like the surface of all the pieces that you see in the Pocket Universe. Once we found bismuth, we thought, okay, what if it has the finish of bismuth and it kind of grows like bismuth does, and it kind of does these arrays that create staircases and builds upward to create walls, and once we once we kind of nailed those elements and started shaping it into a dark world and putting these structures and these clusters into the dark world, then we're like, okay, we feel like we're on to something. We feel like we're starting to find it here. But that was a tricky one. A lot of research, a lot of trial and error, a lot of throwing ideas at the wall, seeing what sticks. But I was really proud of where it landed, and really, really proud of how it looks in the film. A great debt is owed to visual effects. The fantastic team of Stephane Soretti and Susan Pickett, they just did an excellent job, really doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the execution of that. And geez, they did a great job. Mm.
That's what I was gonna ask, because that sounds like it's where your department and VFX kind of come together, because what you were describing with the cubes, then they have to also do that in the stuff that's not physical on the set, like when they're like with the
Exactly.
black hole and everything. So that's pretty cool to see how that comes together for you guys.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. We did a lot of like the flooring pieces and what people are walking on, and a few wall pieces behind them. But then visual effects really did all of the surrounding world. So they did a great job. Mm.
that's really cool. And I know we're running to the end of our time, but I want to ask you, what is your favorite set if you have one?
It would be the Fortress of Solitude.
Okay.
That's just a dream come true for a production designer to get to do a reimagining of a piece of film history. That was incredibly exciting, and the team, I just couldn't be prouder of what we all pulled off. So yeah, that's the one that's going to stay with me for a long time. I cry every time it comes up on the screen.
Oh, that's awesome. When you were designing the fortress, given this is the start of the DCU and we'll probably see it more in the future, are you already imagining like what the other rooms could be like, or are you more confined to what you built?
Great question. Great question. More confined to what we're building, but also, even if it's not going to be seen, even if it's not going to be seen on camera, you're always thinking like, hey, this hallway, what could this hallway lead to down here? So if we have robots coming around, maybe that robot was in a laboratory back there. Maybe, is there some kind of a bedroom, on this upper level? You're always thinking about those things just as a way to kind of add depth to a set. So yeah, and I would be thrilled if the fortress had appeared in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure to speak with you, Beth. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the movie. It's so cool. I say that to people before it comes out, but like now this one's here and it's doing very well. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Really nice to talk to you too. Thanks for all the great questions.